Hi, I'm Faye, and this is the exercise demonstration part of the previous video I did on figure drawing gesture. In that video, I summarized the key concepts movement, balance, exaggeration, asymmetry, and tension, and shared the best resources as well. In this video, I'll be showing how to use those references to put the key concepts into practice. If you don't know what the key concepts are or what active learning is, I'll leave the link in the description. All of the resources mentioned will also be there. After you do your own exercises, you can submit them for me to review and give feedback. Link also in the description. And I just wanted to mention that this is a guide on how you can study figure drawing gesture, but this is all a suggestion. Feel free to do everything that you see here or just some parts. So use this guide in the way that you think will help you the most. So now let's just dive right into the demonstration because this video is long enough as it is. Alright, so let's start with the materials. I'll be using the Pose Space website and their pose tool. This is an amazing resource that you can use to find the poses you want. You can choose from sitting, standing, etc., and male, female, clothed, nude. It's really amazing, and they also allow the photos to be used in instructional videos, which is really nice of them. The link will be in the description. Please check them out. I'll be using regular printer paper and a black watercolor pencil. You can use whatever medium you want, but stick to just one. I'll be holding the pencil in this strange way that you see here, and that's because it takes away a bit of the control I have over the pencil, and it makes it so that I don't get caught up in the details. I recommend trying to draw holding the pencil like this at first. Drawing this way will instantly make your drawings look better in my opinion. Ditch the tripod grip and the chicken scratches at first. We're going to start with step 1, where we'll focus on movement and then exaggeration. We're going to use a very simple style of drawing. First, we're going to focus on finding the main rhythm of the pose, also called the action line. It's usually the main line or curve you can see that goes from the top of the head to the tip of the toe. After that, it's a game of trying to find only the basic curves you need to show the pose. So we want to show the action of the pose with as few lines or curves as possible. Usually that's the shoulder, arms, legs, and head. But depending on each pose, it might be necessary to add a few more things. Sometimes you might have to add the line of the spine or the crotch. There's no checklist to follow. In the case of this pose, for example, because it's a front view of the model, I thought it would be important to show the sides of the torso. See again how to do it from start to finish. So I'm starting with the action line, and you may have noted that I'm always ghosting before drawing. That's drawing on air so that you have a better idea of what you're going to draw. I highly recommend doing that. After I find the angle of the shoulders, I like to start with the shoulder because it gives me a good reference point for the rest of the body. Then I'm indicating the leg, and in this case, because it's bent, I'm using 2 curves rather than just one, creating this sharp angle, but you could do it with just one curve. Again, there's no exact way to do it. As long as the movement is there, all is fair. Next, I indicated the other side of the torso because I thought it was important, and then I moved on to the arms. In this pose, there is a bit of perspective in the arm, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. I recommend sticking to very simple poses in the beginning, preferably standing poses. Remember that as you cycle through these steps, you can increase the difficulty by doing sitting or kneeling or perspective poses. Let's go through just one more demonstration. Now, after getting used to the idea of movement, we can try doing some level 2 iterations. Level 2 is to draw the same thing but applying some changes, which in this case will be exaggeration. I'm skipping level 1 for now, but I'll show you that in a bit. So for this pose, I'm starting similar to the previous ones, finding the line of action, but I'm going to try to make it more pronounced, though I don't think it shows well in this drawing. You can see here that for the shoulder, I'm trying to drive it down much more than it is in the reference, and I'm trying to think on how that would translate to the arms. So I also changed their angle. And I think that this torso would pinch more on one side, and I'm also trying to place the legs farther apart, though again, I didn't do the best of jobs here. And you can see that in this case, I decided to give an indication of the crotch because I thought it would give more clarity to the pose. And last but not least is his head, which you can see I really changed the angle. If we ignore the fact that he looks like Quasimodo, it looks like a decent enough exaggeration. But I know I can do better. So I'm going to try one more time. I'm trying to go even farther this time, and you can see how the action line is really exaggerated now. His shoulders are almost a vertical line now, and the angle of his arms is also pushed down. I think I did a better job with his back this time, and now his right leg is really pushed back, creating a wider gap between his legs, which I think make the pose feel more forceful and dynamic. The rest of the torso and the crotch didn't turn out that well, but I'll ignore that as I think the rest looks pretty good. And with the head, it really looks like he's at the final stage of a very forceful punch. Now we're going to move on to imagination, and we'll start with level 1, which is recalling. So I'm just going to take a very quick peek at the reference, but because I have terrible memory, I'll forget about it soon enough. I struggled a bit with the placement of the arms because I had already forgot where they were supposed to go, but I really had no idea what the legs looked like, so I just invented a bit, and that's fine, that's still drawing from imagination. And then I'm going to compare the two drawings and just fix it. And let me show you another recall. In this one I was able to remember nearly everything, so it went much smoother. So now we're going to jump to level 3, which is drawing something completely from imagination. Sometimes I try to have in mind what the pose I want to draw is, but in this case I just let my hand do whatever it wanted. Drawing this way doesn't always turn out great, but I find it's the most fun. As I was drawing, it reminded me of a superhero, kind of like Iron Man with his palms to the floor, using propulsion to go up. I don't know. I had no idea, I was just having fun. But I think some of that idea kind of translated into the pose, so I'm happy with it. And now we're going back to level 2 imagination. I really don't want you to think that these steps are linear. Cycle and switch to them as much as possible. So level 2 imagination is combining two references, so I'm going to combine the legs from the first drawing with the torso from the second one. In this case, I'm looking at the drawings I did, but try to work towards combining references without having to look at them. And I also invented a little bit, like with the arms and the bend of his torso. Next, in step 2, we're going to use Loomis' method to work on balance and proportion too. I recommend starting by copying his proportion guide. You can pause the screen here, and then you can try doing some on your own using this skeleton. I still start with the action line, even if it doesn't completely line up with the leg or pose, but it's mostly just a guide that you can use to draw around. So for the Loomis method, I first start with the rib cage, then I try to find the discs for the pelvis, which can be a little bit difficult at first, and finally I go for the legs, arms, and head. Once you're done with the drawing, you can compare the different body parts to see if they're proportional, using that proportional guide that Loomis gives. In this case, I'm only interested in the torso to leg ratio because it's what I get wrong the most, but you can definitely compare more things at first. Here's another demonstration from start to finish. First, I'm finding the rhythm line, then shoulder and arm sockets. In this drawing, because the torso is a bit hidden, I'm indicating the center line of the rib cage to make things easier. I'm also starting the pelvis with a diagonal line to also make things easier for me. And lastly, legs, arms, and head. You don't need to do everything in this order, it's just how I prefer doing things. I'm checking the proportions again, but because the torso is bent, it won't work perfectly. Proportion guides are just a reference, but they're not very precise, so keep that in mind. Now we're checking for weight distribution. I'm going to use a ruler to draw a central line of balance or weight, and then 2 diagonal lines pointing down in equal distance to the center. These diagonals should hold most of the body mass or weight from the 2 sides. You can see in this case that the leg is really out, even if I put the lines to the side because I think the weight is more to the right. Even adjusted, I think that the leg looks more like it's floating rather than supported on the ground like it was in the reference. You can see I'm taking notes as well because it's important to analyze, and now I'm making adjustments. I'm going to do the same with the other pose, and this doesn't work with every pose, especially more dynamic ones, but with more simple poses when you're starting, doing this can be really helpful. I think I found the proper line this time, and it seems like most of the mass is well distributed on both sides. Now we're moving to level 1 iteration, which is drawing the same thing multiple times. I mentioned in the first video that when I was first learning a concept or method, I would repeat the same drawing 4 to 2 times, trying to fix my mistakes and understand everything better. So let's say I make a lot of mistakes because I don't understand the Loomis method very well. Try to spot the one mistake I did here. But maybe the rib cage isn't in the correct place, or proportions are wrong, the rhythm line isn't dynamic, and etc. After you're done, really analyze your drawings, compare them with the reference. Imagine yourself drawing on top of the reference and see if you can find the things that are wrong with it. Now let's try drawing it again. I unfortunately drew it smaller than the first drawing, so it's a bit more difficult to compare, but I think this one turned out much better. The distance between the ribcage and pelvis is better. The pelvis is now in the correct direction, facing each other rather than parallel. Her right shoulder is in a better position, more hidden like in the reference, and I prefer the legs here too. The only thing is that the torso is more straight rather than arched and pushed out, but oh well, it's never going to be 100% perfect. And now I'm doing level 3, imagination, drawing without any reference fresh in mind. I find the Loomis method easier for drawing from imagination because you have this structure for how you should draw the ribcage, legs, arms, and etc. I had a very vague idea of what I was going to draw, but it still turned out pretty decent because I had this structure to help me. I was trying to draw someone sort of falling with one arm supported on something like a bench. and after comparing the proportion and weight distribution, I wrote that everything seems fine. Now we're moving on to the last step, and we'll use the force method. I really think you need to at least watch the videos on force to understand it well. The link will be in the description. But basically, you identify the curves that have the most force to them, either energy from the movement or gravity pulling it down. In this pose, she's twisting and her torso is pushing out, so I think the spine and the torso are the most forceful curves. The force method is also about keeping everything connected, and since this is the first time we're drawing the full figure, it's a good way to ensure we don't lose the proportion when we add more detail. So look how I drew an S-curve that went from her back to her hips, keeping everything connected. I'm also drawing through my forms, not hiding anything. For example, you can see the full torso even if her breasts should be in front of it. This is very important to maintain your awareness of what the forms look like, which will prepare us for the next topic, which is the form. So I really like how the force method connects gesture to form. Now I'm adding more emphasis to the lines that have more force to really show that tension and increase the contrast between the more relaxed areas. For this next demonstration, I'll try to focus more on asymmetry. In this one, I'll show how I usually apply it when I'm drawing the complete figure, but after I'll show a drawing more focused on asymmetry alone rather than the whole picture. I'm trying to alternate the curves in the arms and especially in the legs, but I'm not going to leave a blank space. I will add more curves to complete the drawing, but the main curves with more emphasis should be alternating or asymmetric ones. I'm continuing to draw through the form, as you can see here with her head and shoulder, so don't be conservative. Draw through everything because it will help you understand the complete structure of the drawing. lastly, I'm doing some final adjustments and adding more weight to the curves I think are more important. I'm also holding the pencil in a different position because now that I have the general drawing, it's okay to go in with more detail. And because I didn't think I had a good example for focusing on asymmetry alone, I quickly filmed something so the lighting isn't the best. But for practicing asymmetry, really try to go from one side of the body to another, sort of like pinballing from one curve to the next. You don't have to do final drawings like this, but it's a good exercise to train you to observe these things in the human body. Right, so now the final thing is to draw from imagination. And I'm gonna do level 2, which is mesh up to references again. So I'm studying the reference, and then you can see that I'm putting it away, I'm not looking at it, and I'm gonna try to mesh up the torso from the first reference, which was twisting, and the legs from the second reference. This was something. I really struggled with it. I got the motion wrong at first, like the twisting motion of the torso. You're going to see me putting it down in a few seconds, and that threw me in for a loop. I also think the position of the legs didn't work out very well. But even though the drawing didn't look, let's say, accurate, I was still very happy with it, and I wanted to leave it in so you can see why it's important to try drawing from imagination, even if it's going to look terrible, even if you have no idea what you're doing. So you can see I'm just focusing on the legs because I have no idea what to do in that torso. And you can see here I'm putting the wrong motion. This is completely wrong. This is not how I should be doing it. And I'm going to try to rotate my body in my chair to try to really understand how the hell are you supposed to, you can see me rotating. And I finally understood I was drawing it in the wrong direction. So you can see that as I put the line in the correct way, it immediately starts making a little bit more sense. You can see that now that it's rotating away from the viewer, I guess. But the legs don't work very well with the torso. They're also a bit too long. So your drawings from imagination will not look as good as whatever you're doing from reference. And that's not a problem at all. Remember that we're doing these exercises to learn. As long as you have learned something, you have succeeded. So why am I leaving this drawing here? Why am I super happy with this drawing, even though it didn't turn out the way I wanted? Because I learned so much from it. I learned the twisting motion that I was getting wrong. So at least now I know exactly the way that the body moves towards. I should have known that already, but apparently I didn't. And that's the second thing. It exposed a gap in my knowledge. I didn't know that I wasn't good at this twisting motion. And now I know. I know exactly what I need to practice to become a better artist than I was just a few minutes ago. That's amazing. This was an amazing drawing. And you can see that I'm trying to fix the legs a little bit somehow, try to make them work a little bit better in this perspective, but it doesn't work. It's not very, let's say, realistic or accurate. But again, as I said, that doesn't matter. I don't measure the success of my drawings in how accurate they look, but in how much I learned from them. Obviously, I also want my drawings to look good, but I know not to be frustrated and just find the value in each mistake. and everything in this drawing doesn't look okay. Like even the head is not exactly decent, but again, that's totally fine. I still learned, it still helped me, and that's all I care about. And I think the torso by this point is not looking too terrible. If you cover the top of the drawing, it looks decent. If you cover the bottom, I think it looks somewhat decent aside from the arms, but it's okay. So you can see here that now I'm analyzing and I'm telling you exactly what I've learned, which is that I need to study more rotation. So now we're going to start with a 1-minute gesture drawing demonstration, so you can see how exactly I use everything that I learned into just drawing some quick gestures. I also wasn't able to add a clock, so you just have to trust me that I took exactly 1 minute to draw it. But there are no jump cuts, so you can see in my entire process. And I really like to do this very flat, not exactly connected lines that you can see here. I like leaving gaps. I don't know why, it's just my style. You can draw gestures in whatever style you want. You don't need to follow the methods that I just showed. It's completely up to you how you're going to do it. If you find a different style that you like better, go for it. The exercises and the methods that I showed were just to help you learn the concepts: movement, balance, exaggeration, asymmetry, and tension. Once you have learned those with the methods, then you will be better able to apply them in whatever style you choose. So now you're ready to get practicing, and don't forget to submit your drawings for feedback. And if you have any problems or questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to help you. And next week, we'll be studying figure drawing form. We'll see how to make our drawings look more three-dimensional. Anyways, if you found this video helpful, please consider sharing, liking, subscribing, all that good stuff. And thank you so much for watching.